All right, our second presenter, Heather Blasnek. Let's give a round of applause.
Good morning. Quick show of hands, who here is familiar with an eggshell upbringing? Okay.
What's that? What?
An eggshell upbringing. So for a large number of you who didn't raise your hands, what that means is that when you walked into a room, you had to kind of scan the room, figure out, was it safe to exhale? How are people going to respond? What was that going to be like? And you always felt like you were walking on eggshells. That was my upbringing. That was normal. My mother was diagnosed psychotic, schizophrenic, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, and was in and out of mental institutions for most of my upbringing. Struggled with eating disorders, and every time a medication or combination would work, she would think she was cured and she would stop taking them. I kind of compared it in my mind to like an alcoholic falling off the wagon. It was about that stable. So with this, there was an interesting way to grow up. And part of her illness was that if anybody ever said anything against her, then there was no conflict resolution. It was, that was it. We were done with that person. So growing up that way, it kind of felt like relationships weren't safe, weren't comfortable. They were very fragile, and they didn't last. And with that, when you're a kid growing up that way, you learn to adapt. You make yourself smaller to fit in the room. You try and make sure that any changes in the room were not your fault. You try to keep the peace. So later on, as I grew up, I ended up moving into a career in recruitment, which was really fun. And in hindsight, the perfect role for somebody who had an eggshell upbringing. Because you learn to see what people are not saying. You understand what's between the lines. You can try and guess and predict people, and people are unpredictable, but you get pretty close. And so with that, I found I was really good at recruiting. I could figure out who was going to be the right culture fit for what specific position. I could figure out what hiring managers didn't have in their job descriptions. What was a way that these people could come together and create a cohesive partnership and grow and be happy. So candidates, clients were super happy. And I was fascinated that I was able to help make that happen. However, I started to kind of reflect, and I'm like, man, I'm really good at making relationships happen for other people. I would love to continue to grow and how I can make that happen for myself as well. So part of what led me to where I stand with Network in Action is not necessarily networking. Everybody in this room does networking, and to be quite frank, a lot of networking feels performative and feels exhausting, to me at least. I am not a natural networker, but creating relationships is a whole nother piece, and it's a whole nother level in helping businesses grow. And so as I started exploring Network in Action, as I started taking a look at what kind of an impact I can help make in helping people make relationships, it's deeper than surface level. Oftentimes what we're looking at is, what's your job title? What do you do? And when we go a little bit deeper than that, it's more impactful. When I was growing up and I was dealing with everything with my home situation, I didn't tell anybody about it. It was incredibly isolating, but we didn't talk about mental health and mental wellness back in that time. We've come a long way now, but that time was different. And so when you think about it, entrepreneurs oftentimes are kind of in their own isolation as well. There's a lot of things we don't talk about. There's a lot of things we hide. I see you amazing social media people who post every amazing thing. We are putting up that facade of the best that we can be because we don't want anyone to know that our closet might be a little bit messy. And so my goal is creating a safe space where entrepreneurs can come together, can learn from each other, have the opportunity to grow by hearing each other's challenges, being raw about what their own are, and being able to create a community where instead of it being what would stereotypically be the most impressive room, I want to create the most honest room, because that's where people really can make an impact on each other, and that's where people grow and businesses end up thriving.
Okay, great. So let's have some questions and answer period, about 20 minutes.
So I am not the work the room person, so I can absolutely relate. I am a one-on-one person, and it's so meaningful for me to connect with the community, but in a one-on-one setting. So describe the approach that you take to be inclusive of all the different types of people that want to meet the community, but aren't the go shake the hands and kiss all the babies.
Oh yeah, okay, so as far as how we operate at Network in Action, we are highly structured. Some people love that, some people prefer to grab a drink and wander around a room. I commend those people because that's not me either. But with that, we try and make it so that it is approachable. We have different discussion topics where people are able to go ahead, come together, share their thoughts. Then we'll switch up those groups, preventing. Sometimes what happens is you get really comfy with your buddies, and we want to make sure that everybody is able to have time with each person, because no one goes to networking to really not meet new people. If you want to do that, go to lunch, go grab coffee, you already know those people. And so we try to make it so that it is approachable for people like us who really feel like that one-on-one is maybe a little bit easier. We want to branch that out a little bit, because one-on-one only gets you so far, and we want to create a tribe and a community. But with that, we do want to make it approachable as opposed to awkward. So it's intentional, meaningful conversations is what we try and drive.
Hey, Heather, just appreciate you in so many ways. I got to know you over the last couple of months, and just love how you approach, it's kind of funny, like networking. It's almost like networking in the sense, which is funny, because my fiance always jokes with me, like, I'll do anything to avoid getting out in the community and talking to people. Like, I am just safe in my bubble. And I remember going to your events, connecting with you, and you just made it so different. So I love the approach that you're taking. Curious, when we're connecting with people one-on-one or within a community, what are some great questions to ask each other to get to those next levels, those deeper levels of getting to know the human behind maybe the job title or the business or whatever they originally say that comes out naturally for them?
Oh, I love that. What a great question, Drew, and thank you for coming out today. With that, what I always recommend, first of all, the most important reason for why anybody does anything is, why do they do it? That's what drives them. But usually whenever I meet with people, I don't even talk about business for the first 15, 20 minutes of a 1-hour meeting. I want to know who that person is. You know, we live in Colorado. What's your outdoor thing? Very few people in Colorado don't have one. Have you been to any great restaurants lately? Just something. Learn a little bit about what they like, who they are, because that's what is going to set you apart as well. Ask them about their family. I recently met with somebody who had been exploring a lot of networking, and he's like, I've been to X number, I don't remember how many, networking groups, and I've had a lot of conversations. You're the first person who asked me about my kids. Like, really? Because that's a huge part of your life. That's a huge part of who you are. It's probably a huge part of what drives your business too, and your motivation to be successful. So I always just recommend save the business for later on once you know who they are. Good questions would be, kind of like I mentioned, what do you do outside of work? What's your thing? Do you, have you been in Colorado long? That's a great one. If they are a native, they can probably tell you a ton of stuff. If they aren't a native, they probably would love recommendations, and that's a great way to build rapport. Thanks, Steve.
I had this question in my mind, and being an old man, I almost forgot it.
You don't have to be old for that, Frank. It happens.
I need the Alzheimer's first. Yeah. My friend, I've had an opportunity to meet with you. I know your husband very well as well. So here's my question, because you've come from an eggshell upbringing. What a great way to frame what you had to deal with, right? Because everyone can relate to that. There's not a person in this room that hasn't had to walk on eggshells. When it comes to networking, we think about one right or one wrong. There is no right, wrong in networking. There's just networking, right? And find the one that fits your niche and do it well. You do it well. So, how did you move from eggshell, because it's kind of an odd place to land, leading a networking group, and what was the process for you to get over that eggshell mentality so that you could do this well?
What a great question. And you're right, networking is very individual to the person. Even though it's business, it's very personal. Depending on your comfort level, depending on what your vibe is, you find your vibe, you find your tribe. I'm gonna trademark that. But as far as kind of going from that point where I felt like I couldn't exhale, it didn't happen overnight. It was over time. I during recruiting realized that I could carry a conversation with just about anybody. And I was really good at getting people to talk about themselves, which people love doing, so that was kind of an easy shell to crack. And so with that, I just started, kind of doing a little bit more reflecting on myself. I met my husband, which was in reality the first really long-term relationship outside of family that I had ever built. And then with having my daughter as well, anybody in here who's parents, kids change your world. They always say that, and you're like, whatever. No, it's true. And it makes you actually take a look at what's important, and it made me realize more that community is huge. And so taking those steps to start creating a community, creating a welcoming space, be a support for other people who maybe also feel isolated in whatever point they're in their life, and oftentimes entrepreneurs do feel lonely. And being able to have that desire has pushed me out of my shell. A lot of egg references here, sorry guys.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead. First, I want to acknowledge that you made the exact same mistake as my wife and you married a chef.
I didn't see him for several years. It helped with the relationship length, actually.
And like many people, I too am trying to get over my shyness issues. I know that might sound strange to some of you, but it has been an intentional effort. And I feel like most of us have this same hurdle to get through when we get into a large group of people. And we see everybody talking, and it's like, oh, well, they must know each other already because they're already great friends. But, how does one get out of that shell of first acknowledging, okay, I need to get past what are they going to think of me? Because I think that's a big hindrance for a lot of people. But also, what are some of the, let's say, your standard go-to opening lines or icebreakers when you're in a room full of unfamiliar people?
Well, first off, remember, it's not about you.
I'm sorry?
It's not about you. When you're in a room full of people and you're uncomfortable, it's not about you. There's probably a bunch of other people who are uncomfortable.
It's not about me?
It's not about you. And that's the hardest part, I think, to realize is that it's not about you. It's about everybody else and what can you learn from them. And that's where you can, go ahead if you want to share a little bit about yourself, you can.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, you can ask somebody just a really easy opener. Hey, has anybody had something that's been really successful lately? Completely open-ended. It can be personal, it can be business, it can be whatever they want it to be, and you give them that freedom to decide, and usually people are incredibly responsive to a question like that, where it's just open-ended, and it's about them, and it's not about you, and that also helps you get rid of your nerves, because then you're thinking about what they said.
Thank you.
Hi, Heather. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So I'm actually a member of Network in Action, so I want to give my testimony. So definitely by far the most welcoming, comfortable group that I have been involved in. I actually look forward to the meetings because I don't feel like all eyes are on me. It's about others, and you get to, the questions that she asks are very deep and personal, and you can really get to know someone based off of what they say, and it even talked about your childhood, your upbringing, not just about work related. So I actually love the groups. I also want to say there's only 2 women, so please, any other women, please come join us. I do have a question for you, Heather. If someone is interested in joining, can you explain a little bit about the dynamic of the groups? How does that work? As someone that's like, I'm a financial advisor, is there other financial advisors, all that? How does that work for people who want to join?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for being a member, and I'm glad you're comfortable. With that being said, we are a closed networking group, which means there's 1 person per industry per group. So you have industry exclusivity. The goal is to get to know each other more than just your business, because if you think about who your biggest cheerleaders are in your business, it's probably not somebody who you met by finding out what their business title was and sharing what yours was. It's probably somebody who knows you personally, whether it's a parent or a spouse or a friend. It's somebody who actually knows the real you, and that makes them the best cheerleader for you. So that is what we focus on, is how do you get to know what somebody's struggle is? How do you get to know all of those different pieces that make up what they do every day? Because then you're gonna want to help them. It just naturally happens because you've seen what they've overcome. And so our groups are focused on A, knowing each other, B, continuing to grow together, and C, being able to help each other grow in the community. We are referrals based, and try and make it palatable for all of our members, where it's 12 referrals per year, and you disperse that how it makes sense for you. So we try and be approachable with that and continue to grow. We have 1 group so far that has launched. We have another group that has a waiting list that will be launching here this year. And as far as the future, we're looking at up to 12 groups here in Colorado Springs. So we're excited to continue growing.
Heather, thank you so much for being here. 2-part question for you. First one is, what's 1 or 2 either myths or misconceptions people have about networking? And then the second one is, what's 1 thing you can give us, a takeaway, to help us improve our networking abilities?
Oh my gosh, 2 fantastic questions. Okay, so misconceptions that I run into is that, at least when I talk to a whole bunch of people, because I do anywhere from 8 to 12 one-on-ones every week, it's a lot, in addition to our events. But with that, what I tend to hear a lot is that networking is too time consuming, there's not an ROI, and that people feel like it's a part-time job. And if you're approaching it as a part-time job, it's sure gonna feel like one. And a lot of times I feel like that's because the relationship piece was missed. So as far as some advice that I would give in having effective networking moving forward is, remember that there's a human behind the title. A good example that I always like to give is you can meet, I'm gonna pick on a couple people in the room here, you can meet a few financial advisors and a few realtors in just about every networking event, but they all have something unique. Okay, they might serve a veteran community. They might end up serving more of an artsy community or anything along those lines where they have a specific clientele. They could end up serving people who are needing to have assistance for a down payment on their home. There's so many different directions. So instead of just hearing somebody's title, ask them more about how do you help people, because all of us do. That's what our businesses are. It's why we get excited about them.
Thank you, Heather, for putting this together. When I first started networking years and years ago, I felt that nervousness and the eggshell, and now I'm super comfortable talking to people. And my first question to people is usually, what do you do for fun? What's your self-care? So then, and I will always remember what people do for fun, and I almost always forget what they do for professionally. And then to know if there's somebody that's part of my tribe with the vibe, is that if they ask me what I do for fun.
Yep.
Because if it's all about them, you're like, well, you're not my people, so I'm just gonna kind of turn and walk away. And so if I've walked away from you, I'm sorry that we just don't vibe together. But if we do, then we're gonna be good friends.
I love it.
So my question is, Give us one success story.
One success story? Oh gosh, I was not prepared for this one. I feel like there have been so many great connections made. One great success story, it's not even from our closed group, I host open events for the community. Somebody that we knew who's a plumber, just him and his truck, and we had an event where we had somebody from a very, very large construction company come in as well. The two of them connected, and that plumber has not needed any additional work since that connection. And that's because they got to know each other. And so with that, those kind of connections where you find that connection, that's your person when they ask you a similar question back. That's what we want to find, and that's a success story.
Last question. He is the last question. Oh, I'm the last question. All right.
I think I know this one.
I was going to ask you something deep about parenting and all that, but I guess not this time. So let's switch it up to what can we as a community do to help you?
Well, my goal is to be a connector and a resource for everyone within the community who could possibly need that. So my goal is, if anyone in this room knows somebody who values relationships over transactions, I would love an introduction. I would love to be able to meet more people like that, where that genuine, authentic connection is something that they value. And that's how we grow. We're a new business. We're almost hitting our 1 year. So with that being the case, we are still working on, growing our presence here and knowing people and having them know who we are as well.
All right. Thank you, Heather. Excellent. Go away.